In Essential Task 8.8, we are going to identify the key glands of the endocrine system and describe their effects on behavior. I think this concept map works best horizontally, though you could easily do this vertically as well. The concept map is only the 4 boxes that you currently see. I will return now to the task text, allow you to copy down the portion in yellow, which in this case is the entirety of the task text, before proceeding into the concept map. We've alluded to the endocrine system a few times throughout today's concept map. It is today that we will definitively define what the endocrine system is and differentiate it from the nervous system. There are a variety of systems in our body. That word system can be used when talking about neurons. It can be used when talking about the endocrine system. It can be used when talking about the cardiovascular system. This isn't an anatomy class, so we're not going to get too in-depth into the various systems throughout the body. However, we do need to talk about at least 2. The nervous system, which we talked about in 8.5 and 8.6, and really, quite frankly, honestly, at the beginning of the unit with the just simple structure of the neuron. But we also have to talk about the endocrine system. The endocrine system refers to the various glands in our body that are controlled by a region in the brain called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, although part of the brain, specifically part of the limbic system, is in many ways the linkage between the nerves in our body and the nervous system, and then the glands in our body with the endocrine system. So though the hypothalamus is technically part of the brain, it is the linkage between these 2 systems. The glands in our body controlled by the hypothalamus that produce and secrete hormones specifically into our bloodstream. So when we talk about hormones, whether that's adrenaline, testosterone, melatonin, growth hormone, there are a variety of hormones in our body. They work by being secreted into the bloodstream, meaning they are not going to be present in the synapse. So any hormone, doesn't matter which one, they would not be present in the synapse. Again, the synapse is the space between 2 neurons. Hormones work differently than the neurotransmitter chemicals in our body. Hormones are chemicals that are secreted into the bloodstream, and as a result, they end up lasting a lot longer or having much more prolonged big picture effects. Hormones work almost like sending mail, in the sense that you have to package it, you have to send it in an envelope, it arrives in a couple of days. Where on the other hand, neurotransmitters work a lot like text messages. The moment a neurotransmitter is released into the synapse, it virtually instantaneously has its effect, such as enabling you to move if we're talking about acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter that enables movement, whether that's the reward feelings that we associate with dopamine. So we're talking about 2 very different manners in which these chemicals in our body work. Neurotransmitters, which are virtually instantaneous, having their effect at the synapse, versus hormones, which need to be secreted into the bloodstream and therefore can sometimes linger. One of the interesting things about hormones, such as, for example, adrenaline, is that because they are secreted into the bloodstream and because it can sometimes take a little while for their effects to really kick in, it also means it takes a little while for their effects to subside. If you've ever had a near miss, perhaps while driving, or something has really sparked your arousal, whether that's, or maybe somebody opens the door and they almost hit you and you kind of get scared and you fall back, whatever it might be, you'll notice that for a few minutes afterwards, you still feel aroused. That's actually the adrenaline, partially, still active in your bloodstream. It will take a little while for your body to go back down to a nice homeostatic equilibrium point. So hormones such as adrenaline will remain in the bloodstream even a little bit past the actual event that triggered that instantaneous arousal. As a mnemonic, when I look at the word endocrine system, the DOC in the middle reminds me of the word doctor. Doctors work quite a bit with blood. The big difference between the endocrine system and the nervous system is that the endocrine system is going to work because these chemical hormones are secreted into the bloodstream, have longer lasting effects, and take a little bit longer to subside. And as you'll see, there are some pretty big picture things that hormones do, like managing your sleep cycle. Neurotransmitters, on the other hand, are instantaneous. They are released from a neuron. This process is so fast. That's why we can walk and move and think in such a quick manner. So very different. As a final thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to watch the video here on the endocrine system. The first 4 minutes, we'll take a look a little bit at the glands and hormones with some visuals that I think only Crash Course can do. So I would like you to watch approximately the first 4 minutes of the video attached here. It will also be attached in the Google Classroom. In terms of the 3 glands by name we need to know. Now, technically there are more than these. There are way more than these 3 glands, but these are the 3 I see the College Board most commonly include on the AP exam. So these are the ones that we're going to include in our concept map. The first is the pituitary gland, and if we're going to talk about the glands, we have to talk about the pituitary gland because it is nicknamed the master gland, because it is the gland that is responsible for regulating the secretion of all of the other glands, at least the hormones secreted by the pituitary gland. It, in and of itself, also secretes growth hormone, so it has a twofold effect. One, it plays a master role over all of the glands in our body. Two, it in and of itself will produce and secrete the growth hormone. As a mnemonic, when I look at this word, the PIT, I think of the word pit or core. That term is often used with something like an apple or other types of fruit. But I think that's a useful mnemonic because if you think of the word pit or core, the pituitary gland is really the core gland that overlaps the secretion and the regulation of hormones from all of the other glands. Additionally, the UIT in the middle of the word pituitary almost looks like the word unit. It's one letter off, UNIT. Whenever we talk about measurements like height, we typically use the word units. That way you can connect the pituitary gland with the UIT in the middle to the word unit and think of growth hormone. Because again, the pituitary gland has two primary functions. And if you look at those first 6 letters, you can easily connect both of them. It's at the pit or the core of all glands, and it's the one that secretes growth hormone, UIT, in reference to the word unit. It's technically positioned approximately here in the middle of your head, a little bit above the brainstem is approximately where it will be located in a diagram, though it's unlikely that they would ask about that. The next are your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands look like almost 2 little peanuts right here above your kidneys. Your adrenal glands are responsible, as the name might suggest, for secreting adrenaline. It's not inconceivable that the word adrenal glands would appear on the AP exam, and if it's in the context of an FRQ, if you talk about how adrenaline amps you up, even amping you up during the fight or flight response to be more clear, that would be a sufficient approach to answering a bullet. So we're talking about eventually triggering an increase in heart rate and breathing. I made this comment earlier, but if you get into a near miss accident, whether it's driving or walking into the halls or something really scary happens, and you feel like you're still aroused a few minutes after, it's probably because the adrenal gland secreted adrenaline in response to that environmental stimulus. And now the adrenaline is still in your bloodstream, at least for a little while before you go back to homeostasis. And you experience that amped up feeling a little bit longer than the actual event might necessitate. You can easily connect the hormone secreted by the adrenal glands by looking at the beginning of the word. It is, in fact, the beginning of the word adrenaline. The last one for our purposes is the pineal gland. This one's also so positioned, and this diagram is actually off. It's a little bit higher up. It's positioned up towards the brain as well, kind of in the middle of the head. The pineal gland secretes melatonin. Melatonin is a chemical that we referenced a couple times this unit, never in the context of a concept map and something you needed to write down, but I sort of alluded to it a few times. Melatonin is the hormone that gets secreted by your pineal gland, and it controls your sleep-wake cycle. We'll talk way more about sleep in a later concept map, but one of the primary reasons why you get sleepy at the same time every night and then wake up at approximately the same time every morning is that the roughly 24-hour cycle that your body lives through is regulated by secretion of melatonin from the pineal gland. And during points of the day where it's anticipated that you'd fall asleep, your melatonin levels are going to be really high. And then that's going to certainly change over the night. It's going to reach its peak during what should hopefully be some of your deeper stages of sleep. And then by the morning, it will begin to subside. If you've ever had the opportunity of waking up without an alarm clock, but realizing, wow, I still woke up on time, you can thank the fact that your pineal gland regulated your melatonin levels appropriately. You can actually get melatonin over the counter, or at least pills that are chemically similar to melatonin, if not just melatonin itself, as a manner of falling asleep. It's actually very common. The next time you go to a CVS or a pharmacy, take a look around the types of drugs that are prescribed, or even just rather over the counter for sleeping. You'll probably see the word melatonin attached to one of them. I made a comment back when we talked about neurotransmitters that GABA might put you to sleep to take a nap in the middle of the day. GABA is a chemical that can help relax you, even putting you to sleep. Melatonin is the chemical in your body that regulates the full-blown sleep cycle, not going and taking a nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon after a day of school. I'm talking about the full-blown need to sleep for 7-8 hours every night, and the fact that you get sleepy at about the same time every night and then wake up pretty reliably at about the same time every morning. As a mnemonic, when I look at the word, if you capitalize the P, it kind of looks like a bed to me. Like the P here is a pillow. Looking at the word penal, all of those other letters, I, N, E, A, are kind of all on the same level. And then the L at the end almost looks like the other side of a bed. So whenever I look at this word with the capitalized P, it always reminds me of a bed, specifically a bed made of maybe pine wood. You can use that as a mnemonic to connect sleeping or the bed with the idea of melatonin.